The Move, Look, and Listen podcast with Dr. Doug Stephey is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download by visiting audibletrial.com/inbound. We'll have a link in the episode notes for your convenience. Many of the books mentioned here in the podcast are available in Audible. Sign up for a free 30-day membership trial, and you can download any book you like. Support the Move, Look, and Listen podcast with Dr. Doug Stephey by visiting audibletrial.com/inbound.
If our two eyes are not working together well as a fast, synchronized team, our internal MapQuest continues to be off. It's consistently inconsistent with our ability to judge time and space. Those that don't feel well grounded, those that have some measure of anxiety, oftentimes it starts in the visual system. If you can't move, look, and listen in a fast, accurate, effortless, sustainable, age-appropriate, meaningful way, you're in a world of hurt. There's a whole world in vision and how it affects brain function that no one's ever shared with you. 2020 is perceived as the holy grail of going to the eye doctor. Well, I'm here to change that paradigm. Hello, and welcome again to the Move, Look, and Listen podcast. I am your host, Dr. Doug Stephey. Our guest today is round number 2 for Leslie Fisher, renowned keynote educational technology speaker. We're blessed to have you today. Welcome, Leslie.
Oh, you're sweet. That's kind of you.
Well, that's because you carried the day yesterday playing golf. So I'll be nice.
No. But okay, I'll take it.
So today's topic is assistive technology in the educational world. And Leslie is, again, a nationally known speaker in this field. I feel fortunate to have her both as a friend and as an expert in this arena. And so we're going to talk about a number of assistive technologies today, who the candidates are, how do we find you, what's available, and how do we make your life simpler. So Leslie, from your perspective, who are the candidates for assistive technology? Let's start with that.
Well, I'm going to tell you, honestly, it's everyone. And that's the amazing thing that we're beginning to discover is now that technology is getting to the point where we can help out those that need a little bit more help than your regular person. We're finding out those regular people are getting benefit from assistive technologies. And it's a pretty amazing, cool thing. One of the things I show, for example, is I show that built into an iPhone is a magnifying glass and also into an Android device as well. And I'll hear stories about people taking pictures of a menu or a pill bottle and zooming in, and you don't need to do that. It's under accessibility in iOS 13. It's right on the main level now. You go into accessibility, you click on magnifier, you turn it on, and then you just hit your iPhone button 3 times, and the next thing you know, you're looking in a magnifying glass. And not only is that helping people that have assistive needs, that's helping out the yous and me's of the world that are in a dimly lit restaurant or in a bathroom trying to read a medication, and everyone's winning. And I'm going to give a hat tip to Microsoft on this too, because I went to their accessibility conference, and really the first thing that every single department at Microsoft does is they address accessibility. And before they even go into working on a feature, they go, how can this work for the accessibility community? Can it? If it can't, what do we need to do? And it was interesting learning that their most recent release of Windows 10, 2 of the top 10 features that Wired named were designed for people for accessibility. And it just happens to work for everyone. So we're in a really cool time where people are beginning to spend more attention, rightfully so, to accessibility. And I think in the process, all of us are winning.
So is that a tide change at Microsoft?
I think it's a tide change everywhere. I think it's a tide change everywhere. And I think it's this whole idea that we are becoming a more diversified, wonderfully diversified society. We're beginning to look after people. And also technology is getting to the point where we can do this, where early technology couldn't help those with reading problems or other sorts of problems. Technology now can do this. And honestly, we're also running out of really cool technology. I mean, we're beginning to plateau. So where else do we try to give you a whiz-bang feature? And a lot of people are beginning to realize it's in the accessibility world, and what a great place to try to focus on. So yeah.
One of the things that I like about what we're going to talk about today and this accessibility component is the ease of using the technology. Because in the past, and I think this is still true to some degree, technology is great if it's simple for the masses to use. Because if it's not that easy to use, well, then you don't really have access to it. It's too complicated.
Yeah, or it's expensive.
Well, that too. So maybe we can begin to launch into, let's take, for example, the dyslexic student or the student who's struggling with reading. What kind of technologies are available for them?
The good news is there's a lot of them. And we know that I'm slightly dyslexic. And thanks to you, I've also learned I have a vision problem, which I think is part of the whole ordeal with me reading. And the boom goes the dynamite item for me is a product called Immersive Reader. And it's not known by a lot of people. And we're going to go right back to Microsoft. This was created. Microsoft takes a week a year where anyone can design anything they want for fun. And from it, someone designed Immersive Reader because he realized there weren't a lot of solutions for dyslexics. And so Immersive Reader is completely free. It works within OneNote, which is also free. And if you have a student or an adult who is in education, they qualify for the entire Office 365 suite for free. So they can use this for free, and then they can even use this within the entire Office 365 suite for free. It folds into either Microsoft OneNote, which is free, or Microsoft Word. And what you can do is simply take whatever text you're looking at, and then you click on Immersive Reader. It then takes away all of the extra things that might be surrounding that text usually. And then I'm able to change the font, which I'm sure you know, like people pick on Comic Sans, but it's actually a font that dyslexics are able to read more effectively. You can change the background color, and you doing your thing with vision therapy and color therapy, I'm sure you can understand why that's important. You can change the font size. You can change the spacing. And then you can go in and say, show me the syllables for each word. So it'll actually break down the syllables. And then you can say, change the color of the nouns, the verbs, the adjectives, the pronouns. So that way, if you're teaching someone how to read, they're able to understand what those words are. Then there's a picture dictionary. So if there's any word that I'm stuck on, I can click on it and a picture will appear of that word. So if I'm a visual learner, I'm able to see what that word actually means. Then I can translate it. It supports 73 different languages. So I can go and say, just translate it on a word by word basis. And then I can have those words spoken aloud to me. So if I have English as my second language, or I'm learning a different language, I'm able to then take that content and change it. And then I can have the whole thing read back to me. So I can go in and say, just read this. And I can change the reading speed of it. So I can choose it to be a little bit slower. I can even make it faster. And all those translation features can be read as well. I will plead guilty to taking many a long-winded email, not yours, Dr. Stephey, and dunking them in to Immersive Reader because it will help. And I'll sometimes will just click the play button and I'm sitting on an airplane and I just have it read to me. And I'm at that age where I don't need the picture dictionary and whatnot, but oh my gosh, if I had those features when I was a student, I can't even imagine what schooling would have been like for me. And it's been really neat to see how people, once they discover Immersive Reader, realize that they might not even just be helping themselves, especially if they're in education, how much it will help a student. So Immersive Reader, it is part of the Microsoft Learning Tools. And I think in your podcast, you give a bunch of links at the bottom. So hopefully there'll be a link to that. It pretty much works on everything.
So a couple of things I want to go back and revisit just so that the audience knows each of these pieces. Can you describe in a little bit more detail what OneNote is?
Yeah, thank you for that, because I did gloss over that. So OneNote is basically a catch-all for your organizational content. So if you, for example, wrote notes and you needed a place to have them, OneNote would be the place you could do this. It's a completely free application, and this is coveted by a lot of people. It almost has cult-like following. So I can have within OneNote, I can have notebooks, and within those notebooks, I can have notes. The interesting thing about OneNote is it supports all sorts of different ways to paste content in. So for example, if I'll just do a very basic one, I don't know how often you would ever need this, but if I wanted to embed 3D map into OneNote, I could. In the education channel, I could name for you some of the top tools that are used, and all of those could be embedded into OneNote. So I can have one piece of paper that might have 6, 7, 8 different technologies in that piece of paper. The other thing I love about it, and it's something that I don't think we know about and use enough, is that it supports something called clipping. So imagine going to a web page and you want that web page. And what people will normally do is say, oh, that web page, I want to remember this. And then they drag that sucker to their desktop. And next thing you know, 5 months later, there's 80 icons and they just select all delete because they have completely had a poor process of this. Well, if you simply Google OneNote Web Clipper, you'll find out that this is something that will be added to your toolbar at the top of your web browser. And if you find a web page that you think is important, you can click on Clipper. It's then going to pop up and it's going to list all the folders that you've created in OneNote, and you can say, save it to here. So when I'm in my learning modes, I have a folder for each class that I present at. I have a folder for each conference. I have a folder for things that I simply need to read or research. I even have one for when I'm doing home items. And so that way, when I'm going crazy and I'm deep diving into the web, I'm just clicking and it's just dumping itself straight into OneNote. And there's even a feature that I can clean up and say, don't show the ads. Don't show the, just show me the text, show me pertinent images to this article, and that's it. And then remember, once it's in OneNote, I can click on Immersive Reader and have it read back to me. So OneNote, if you are a student or you are someone that collects a lot of notes or collects a lot of things, you probably know Pinterest. Imagine Pinterest for words, and then have it all these capabilities. I can even record audio into it. It does translation. It's if you haven't looked at OneNote and you're kind of an organization freak or a content freak, take a look at OneNote.
And then just for clarification as well, OneNote is accessible across all platforms?
It's accessible across all platforms. I'm saying Microsoft a lot, and I want to remind everyone that I'm a 10-year Apple employee. So this is a very strange thing. I'm sitting here with an iPhone on my Mac with my Apple Watch, and this is not the person I'm supposed to be. And I kind of got, they contacted me a year and a half ago, and I began to see the Microsoft I didn't know about, and they have so many things in the accessibility area, but they're like, we run on everything. So if I'm talking to someone who's a teacher or has a kid in school and that kid has a Chromebook, guess what? The entire Office 365 suite works. OneNote works. It's on the web. It's on your iPhone. It's on your Android device. It works everywhere and syncs across the board.
Hallelujah for that.
And you should, once you discover, like I said, once you discover the OneNote community, you're just going to find it's cult-like because it does so much. And for me in the education space, I didn't even go into the fact that a teacher could create notebooks and then send assignments to those notebooks. Kids can then alter the notes the teacher sends. The teacher can toggle off the notebook, grade that content, bring it back. There's a lot of really cool things that OneNote can do.
Could you speculate at all with what you do for a living? What I'm contemplating is what percentage of the educational community, let's say K through 12th grade, really know about OneNote?
I'm going to say no. And what's so funny is I was like right before this, I was texting the product manager for OneNote, and they don't. And here's the problem, and I'm guilty of it too. We're not paying attention to Microsoft. When we say Microsoft, our brain straight goes to it's a computer, it's a tablet, it runs Windows 10, and they care about themselves. And then we stop thinking about them. And I'm going to plead guilty for doing that for a good decade. And in that process, they were like, hey, where did everyone go? This was our party. And they are trying their best to get the word out about things like OneNote and Immersive Reader. The really cool thing is the product manager for Immersive Reader is the product manager for OneNote, and that's why they go so beautifully hand in hand. And that's another reason why he came up with this idea, which is if I have a struggling learner and they're looking at content in all these different locations, how can I bring it into one place and then have them use a tool to help them read that content more effectively? And so it kind of falls into the principal designs of OneNote.
That's fantastic. And just for clarification as well, I wouldn't mind if you take a minute or two to elaborate on what Office 365 is. So in case there's a listener who's like, I'm sort of familiar with it, but not really.
Yeah.
Let's take a moment to explain.
It's another great point. Thank you. Because I am definitely very, I would say tech focused. And so people would know what that is. We're used to getting Microsoft Office as a box of software, and then having maybe, using it until it, nothing worked, and then paying for that box of software again. What a lot of companies are beginning to do, Microsoft included, is move to a yearly subscription model and move their content online. I wouldn't be surprised if a few years down the line, Microsoft's main offerings, just like Apple's main offerings and others, like Google's is already there, is entirely done online. So Office 365 is the entire Microsoft suite of tools, what you're used to, which is going to be Word, PowerPoint, Excel. They also have a couple other products you probably don't know about. Sway is another one that's in there. Microsoft Teams, which is collaboration. There's all these different things that fall into Office 365. So it is their suite of tools, and it's available online. It is, I believe, $99 a year for humans. Non-human superheroes, which I call teachers, and then the ones they take care of, which I call students, get it for free. So we'll make sure that in the list of links, there is the login for Office 365 for education. You simply type in what school you teach or you're a student at, and then it gives you a free copy of Office 365. So that is available. And remember, it works on everything. So if you have a struggling reader, I would highly recommend one of the things you do is get an Office 365 account. And then I'm just going to get geeky for a moment and say this. Microsoft announced in June that they will be having Google sign-in support for Office 365. So we should be seeing within the next 3 to 4 months, your school districts have the ability to use their already Google Apps for Education account and then log into Office 365 without having to create a new account. So that's being used right now. So if I have someone like a district administrator or a tech TOSA or whatnot listening to this and saying, but we're gaffy Google Apps for Education, you're going to be fine. You're going to be fine in a few months. You don't even need to create another account.
Can you help me understand how Immersive Reader would work with any of the electronic textbooks today? Because there seems to be a move towards where a lot of textbooks are in an e-format.
Yep.
And I think that I'm interested in the seamlessness of how that works with the ebooks.
Well, there's two answers to that. Answer one is that any company can use Immersive Reader technology. It is an open technology that Microsoft is more than willing to offer to you, and the price is insanely cheap. Like the biggest price I've heard for gargantuan companies under $1,000. And that adds an Immersive Reader icon to what you're doing. So on a lot of education applications, there's actually a Immersive Reader icon, and that takes that web page, that content, and it goes straight there. And we're beginning to see book companies do the same thing. If the book company doesn't, then you do have the process of having to highlight that text and paste it into something like OneNote and Word, and then have it then use Immersive Reader. There's also another layer that I want to add to this, if it's okay, and that is an application called Microsoft Office Lens. Microsoft Office Lens is an app on Android and iOS that lets you take a picture of anything. And when you take that picture, it will clean the item up. And if it has text in it, you can then click and say Immersive Reader, and it opens Immersive Reader up on your mobile device. Now, it doesn't do things like change the color of the nouns and whatnot. It doesn't have picture dictionary. But what it allows is it allows me, when I'm looking at a book and the text is so close together, it's just the stuff that just hurts my head. Or I'm looking at a magazine in an airplane, I'm able to take a picture of it in Office Lens. I'm able to have it identify that text, and I'm able to listen to it in Immersive Reader, change the text size, change the background, have it read to me, and it makes my life so much easier. So my kind of 1-2 punch with taking any text that surrounds me is Immersive Reader in the online world, and then Office Lens in a world that I can't get that content one way for some reason electronically on a larger device. And that's my mobile solution. And the two of those have just simply made my world a better place.
If I understand the Office Lens piece, do you have to do it a page at a time?
Yes, you do. Absolutely. Okay. So that isn't a perfect world scenario. If text can be copied, then a better scenario is you sitting on your Mac, PC, Chromebook, or whatnot, using Word and using OneNote or Word, and then dunking in and running immersive reader that way. But in a bigger thing, I would say that if there's a teacher that's listening to this or a parent that's listening to this, and you do have an ebook, I think a better thing would be to get in touch with that developer and see if they've heard of immersive reader. Because once again, people have it. And when they do, that textbook company isn't losing any money in giving immersive reader ability into that product. So I would say reverse engineer the whole thing and make your voice heard, because it is a very easy and affordable process.
Do you know how immersive reader compares with Bookshare or Learning Ally?
I don't. I would say, if anything, I don't even know if they have support for it. But if not, I could easily see those having support for those in the future. I mean, immersive reader is something that just simply gets layered on top of anything that is online text-based. Immersive reader can easily be layered into that scenario.
Oh, we got to work that out, because
I agree.
One of the things that I find is, if you're a struggling reader, you're severely handicapped in being able to improve your vocabulary and your logic and reasoning skills and your ability to understand spoken language or express yourself verbally or in writing, because the handicapping factor is you can't do the volumes of successful reading that you need to be able to do in order to change your language and vocabulary. And technologies like this allow you to listen to language at your age level or even beyond your age level, because, as you know, there's a lot of these struggling kids who don't have problems with spoken language. Their handicapping condition is, I can't read as much as I need to or want to.
Perfectly.
And this technology gets them the opportunity to listen to language at or above their chronological age levels and foster their language development while we work on the issues that are preventing them from becoming the successful readers that they need to be able to become. So the technology and having access to it is just fantastic.
Well, and I also like the customizable options in immersive reader, because all of a sudden you can have a teacher that can hand the same text to a group of students, and then that student can sit there and say, oh, I need to change the font size to this, the speed to this, I need help with this. And so you're able to customize that, which is so great, because, when I was in school, there was no solution. And then the generation after me, there was only like one solution to help them out. And so now we're getting into this idea that individual learners can have individual solutions, which is just great.
Well, and the other thing that is so interesting to me about this technology is, like, when you say, Doug, you can change the font size and you can change the spacing. And for a lot of these kids who have unidentified and unremediated vision-based learning deficits, being able to do those two things alone, it's huge in their ability to visually engage in print. That is just fantastic stuff.
I agree. And Microsoft, I've been super fortunate that I've gone to campus a few times and I got to meet their head of dyslexia studies. And so, they have a head of dyslexia studies, meaning there's other people that are part of that group. And you can tell that they really value and they communicate a lot with a lot of different organizations and people to make sure that they're representing how they should. And it's been really neat to watch the process.
On a related note, with immersive reader, seems like we've talked in the past about another technology called Seeing AI. Do I have that right?
Oh, yes, Seeing AI. I love that. I absolutely love Seeing AI. It's just so awesome.
So,
and that's like a double win. So, yeah.
Well, should we talk about that a little bit?
Oh, I'd love to. Let's say Microsoft again. So this is Microsoft. It is only available on the iPhone because it's designed for low vision. And when I asked the product manager from Seeing AI, by the way, I want to say Microsoft is not paying me a penny for any of this. I just want to make that very clear. When I talked to the product manager for Seeing AI, I said, why is it only out on iOS? He goes, because the low vision community uses iPhones. That's the main device they use. So we're going to where they're going. And that really shows you where Microsoft is. is. And so Seeing AI is an app to help the low vision community. So it is constantly, when I run it, it is constantly looking for content around me. So if it sees text, it's going to say that text out loud. And I can then capture the text. I can have that read to me, but I could point it up to a screen and it's going to read exactly what that says. It even has the ability to describe a scene for me. So if I walk into your office, it'll say, it looks like you're in an office. And then if I point to an eye chart, it'll say that is an eye chart. And it will be, and I could even point, my favorite thing I do, and the reason I say it's a double win is it's so helpful for people that need it, but it's so darn funny for the vision community, because one of the things you can do is point it to a person and it will say, it'll guess that person's age, it'll guess, say with brown hair and a mustache looking happy. And so when I present, I always do that. And I have someone from the audience come up and I go, listen, this software might be nice to you. It might not be nice to you. and then I'll take a picture and usually the audience just starts laughing their head off. I have a friend of mine that guessed him as a 53-year-old man looking happy and he was 41. And now his entire staff and me, we just call him 53. So anytime I see him, I'm like 53, and he has to explain why the heck he's being called 53. It even does currency. So it will say, if you put money, it'll tell you how much currency you have in your hand. Because once again, think about it. Low vision community probably has a hard time differentiating a 5 to a 10 to a 20. And it has a barcode reader. So not only it will tell you exactly what the product is. And I got this really sweet email from an educator. And she says, I'm typing this to you with tears in my eyes because my mom stopped shopping. Because she kept coming home. It sounds so silly, but she kept coming home with wheat bread and she likes white bread. And she stopped shopping. And once I saw you show Seeing AI and I showed you do the barcode, and I usually have a bottle of water or a Diet Coke that I show this with, I told her about it. She went back to the market and she came home crying because she has white bread. And you just look at that kind of stuff and it's just amazing. It even has things like light detection. So if they're walking too close to high power light, it'll emit a tone. So they know they might be too close to certain lights. It'll read colors. So Seeing AI is just this amazing app that, once again, no one knows about. And when I show it, people just can't believe that something like that is available to them to use right now. Now, Google, just so you know, I'm not getting paid by Microsoft for all of this. Google has an app called Google Lookout, which between me and you is a complete steal from Seeing AI because it came out way after Seeing AI. And it doesn't work on all of their devices. So it's out there. So if you're an Android user and you're like, oh, I like this, but you just said iOS only, check out if Google Lookout is supported on your device. And if not, they are adding support for additional devices all the time. And it's pretty much the same thing. It does all the same stuff. It's a direct steal. They keep stealing from each other, and that's great because in the end, we all win.
So what I really want to know is if you used Seeing AI and I had a golf club in my hands, would it say pro level swing or Doug, you should take up bowling?
No, that's a whole other application, but it does exist. Just so you know, there is a golf swing app, and then you can even stop it. And because me and my golf coach do this, so my swing's acting up, I have someone video my swing, and then he'll send it back, and he can put the little lines, shows this, and then he can add commentary. He can stop it. He can play it. It's amazing, but no, not Seeing AI.
All right. I just want to be clear on that.
Okay. All right.
All right. Let's move on to maybe a kid who's been diagnosed with dysgraphia or has challenges with handwriting.
Yeah.
Can we talk about technologies that support that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And the one that I'm kind of familiar with, but not demonstrably so, is LiveScribe Pen.
You got it. And it was, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So can you tell us about that?
Yeah, because it was so funny when you mentioned it, because we were talking and you're like, what about LiveScribe? I'm like, oh my gosh, that's in my hidden bag of tricks. So you made my day when you mentioned it. So LiveScribe is in my hidden bag of tricks. And this is another one that a lot of people don't realize exists. There's other versions of this pen, meaning there's competition now. And I'm going to say none of them are a big smack it out of the park kind of thing, but I still think LiveScribe is the best in this. So here we go. It is a pen, and the newest version is called the LiveScribe Azure. It is only $99. The first version of my LiveScribe was $550 and 3 times the size. So we are beginning technology. It's beginning to look like just a pen. And it has a Bluetooth connectivity that works with iOS or Android. They do have other versions of the pen that work with Mac or PC. And you do have to use their specialized paper. It's not expensive, but you have to use that paper. It comes in multi-subject, 3-ring, spiral. It comes in moleskin, skein, whatever you want to call it. So whatever your flavor is, you can find that paper. You hook it up to your iOS or Android device, you take out the pen, you take out the paper, you start writing, and it will automatically send your handwritten notes live, moment to moment, to the LiveScribe app on your iOS or Android device. And I'll stop there and then add another layer. And yeah, it supports OneNote, it supports Evernote, it supports exporting as PDF. And so you can instantly send those notes to whatever you're using to design your catch-all of content. So for me, I always like the fact that I prefer to handwrite my notes versus type my notes. And I think it's more personal if I'm in a small meeting. And so I love the fact that it's immediately going to my device. But that's not the boom goes the dynamite for me with the LiveScribe. What the boom goes the dynamite is its recording option. So I can then say record, and it opens up the microphone of my mobile device. And as I write, it will synchronize what was exactly said at the moment I was writing it. So I always say jokingly, I suffer from something called ADOS, attention deficit. Ooh, shiny. And so that way, if in the middle of writing notes, I get totally distracted, and all of a sudden, whatever I was writing, I have no idea what they said because shiny object kicked in. I, in my own personal way, will put a check, an asterisk, something that lets me know that I'm not paying attention anymore. But I'm able to go back and I'm able to tap in that area and I'm able to hear the rest of it and augment my notes later. I remember one time interviewing a higher up at Sony that I had to introduce. I only had 5 minutes to interview him and I used my LiveScribe and I said, "Sir, please forgive me. Is it okay if I record you? I'm not going to put it on the web." And he said, "Sure." When I introduced him, he's like, "Okay, you need to know I need to know what that pen is," because I was able to remember everything, and that's their catch line. And so I can go back to the app, tap on any words, and while the audio is being spoken, you actually see the text change color. It's going to go from a gray color to a green color. So you're able to see exactly what was said while you were writing that note. And for the geeks out there, I can even export it, not just to any of my cloud services or a PDF. I can export it as an Illustrator file. So you can actually make pen paths of the whole thing, which I'm not sure why you'd need to do that. But another great thing you do is you can export it as a movie. So imagine a teacher trying to explain to the students something and using a LiveScribe and exporting the whole thing as a movie, and you could watch that movie play. You can't tap on it like you can within the LiveScribe app, but who cares? Because you can see the color change and you can see when someone's describing something. So the LiveScribe used to be quite expensive, not work everywhere, quite bulky in size, and now it's a pen. It's under $100. They are a company that's not US based. So I have had the support hasn't been as woohoo as I'd like it to be. It's not perfect world for me, but I tolerate it because it's making such a difference. But I know the support side of it could be a little bit better.
So I just want to make sure that I've understood a little bit of what you just told us about the LiveScribe pen. So I'm taking notes on the special paper. That's being converted Bluetooth onto my iPhone.
Yep.
But if I hit the audio feature, it's recording the speaker?
Yep.
And is there a time limit on how long it will record?
As big as your devices.
Got it.
So now there's another version of the pen that works on Mac and PC. So that one, the recording goes into the pen. And so you will talk to people who I bumped into reporters, and the reporters would rather have the recording on the pen because when they're in the field, they might be using their iPhone or something to type things up. And how the one that works that records into the pen is you actually tap on the physical piece of paper. So there's nothing changing color, but you can then tap on the physical piece of paper and it knows exactly the audio that happened when they tap on that part of the paper. So there is kind of like an umbrella of different versions based on what your situation is. But most people in the learning area will gravitate towards the version that it works on iOS and Android.
All right. So far, so good. We've got to hear about Immersive Reader. We've got to hear about Seeing AI. We've got to hear about the LiveScribe pen.
Yep.
All good stuff.
Yep.
Can we speak a little bit about dictation software like Dragon Speaking Naturally or some similar kind of software?
Yeah, absolutely. But before we leave this, I want to add one more, because there's one more program that I think is great for young kids, especially if you are an educator, and it's called NewsELA, and it's spelled NEWSELA, NewsELA, and some will call it newsela.com. And what it is today's top news, big stories throughout the world, speeches, history, all sorts of things, stories. Or imagine if you had someone read the newspaper. They, okay, let's just go to something like Wall Street Journal. Not most students would read Wall Street Journal, but I guess you and me, if we read Wall Street Journal, we'd be like, wow, that's a word I don't know. What the heck is that word? Now, we talked about Picture Dictionary. I don't think Picture Dictionary and Immersive Reader is going to bring up some crazy financial word and, that kind of thing. So what NewsELA does is that it has 5 different reading levels for the stories, and it will actually reword the entire thing for different reading levels. So if you had something like ravenous in there, like, 17 ravenous bears eschewed upon you would click on it and it would go 17 bears ate. And so it does such a better job of being able to have one teacher or even a parent share a story with the kid, and then they can set that reading level, and the entire thing is reworded. It is reworded for that reading level. And that is something that a teacher can just deploy in a classroom, and everyone's reading the same story. And the brainiacs are getting their brains, all twitchy with all the cool words. And the kids that are struggling with readers are getting the story without those big words concerning them. And then I'm going to add one more. It's a website called Rewordify. And this was created by a teacher in New York. And he was realizing that kids would come up to him and go, what's this word? What's that word? What's this word? What's that word? What's this word? What's that word? And so he was like, oh, geez. So he designed a website where you can just dunk text into it, and it will look at words that he thinks are complex, and it rewords it, and then returns it reworded. And so then the words that are reworded are highlighted in yellow, and you can click on them, and it will show you what it changed it to, and you could play that word back. And he created this, and it's amazing. I think there's close to 100,000 words in it. And you could even create lessons. You could even create little things like quizzes. So a teacher can say, make a matching quiz, make a question bank quiz, make a definition quiz. And the thing is just absolutely amazing, because you can take stuff and just shove it in there and it rewords. And then to add one more thing, summary, SMMRY. I can take paragraphs of text, and I remember Cliff Notes. I survived on Cliff Notes because Cliff Notes made it easier on me. And it's basically Cliff Notes for any text you give it. So you paste it in there, and it looks at it, and it uses machine learning and artificial intelligence to summarize it and not have you have to strain your head. And I will also plead guilty to taking many an email and shoving it into summary. and when I'm reading it, I can tell if I need more content, then I can go back to the original email. And so it really, those tools, I just make my world, and I know would make a student's world a better place. Okay, dictation. Dictation is everywhere. A lot of people don't realize that in Google Docs, you can go into voice typing, and there's a voice typing option, and you can keep typing. And not only that, you can tell it to highlight sentences and bold words. And so I know we talk a lot about Dragon Dictation, but I hope that no one, if someone that works for Dragon Dictation listens to this, I'm sorry, but it's everywhere. It's in your iPhone. There's a microphone option that you can now speak with absolutely no problem. It's in Word, and it can translate into different languages. It's in everything. It's an accessibility feature. Not only that, iOS 13 and accessibility just released voice control. So you could actually use your voice to control your entire iPhone. So that includes being able to talk into text messages. So dictation is awesome. You no longer need a piece of software or an application to do that. Anything that does word processing probably has voice dictation. And if it doesn't, head straight to Google Docs, go to voice typing, and you can start it there and place it into anywhere else. Or if you're a Microsoft user, head straight to Word. And yeah, let's go back to the guy you just learned about. It's in OneNote too. OneNote does dictation. Everything's going to be going dictation more and more.
Well, that's fantastic, because that poor kid who has trouble with handwriting is struggling to put their thoughts on paper because of all the different steps required to do handwriting. And when we say Because here's how I see these kids struggle. They either struggle with content of thought, or the punctuation, the spelling, the grammar, the capitalization of language, written language, or they struggle with the visual motor aspects of handwriting. And so if I'm grading a paper and I say, wow, your spelling looks terrible, like you need to rewrite this and put more attention on spelling. Well, then their content of language goes back like 2 or 3 years, and they're not able to represent their thoughts as well as they can make them because they're handicapped by the things that we've just talked about.
Yep.
And this dictation says, you know what, we're going to take really most all of that out of the picture. I'm interested in what's going on in your head and the content of your thinking skills. Yep. And man, oh man, that levels the playing field to be able to do that. And that's what these kids need, right? They need a win on their side every now and again.
Yep.
And be reminded that they're smart kids, but they've got these handicap and conditions that we haven't fully identified nor remediated yet. And this just helps. Again, it goes back to episode 1 when I talked about if books could kill and the toll that takes on your psyche month after month, year after year. This really can alleviate much of that. This is fantastic.
And I'm a big believer, and I'm going to just say a few things here. I'm a really big believer in trying to meet the kid at the kid's level, and then in turn asking that kid for more. So you can sit there, and if you identify a student that does have a learning problem, trying to come to their level. So I can sit there and say, I'm going to let you dictate this so I can get your thoughts in place. But you got to realize that the more that we can try to work on your grammar and your punctuation, the better. So let's dictate it first. Let's make sure your thoughts are in place, and let's try to work together on making sure we now understand grammar and punctuation. So I'm a big believer in doing that, because it then shows the student, you kind of care a little bit, which of course they do, but it kind of brings them, to the level. I'm going to add 2 other applications. In mobile, there is Google Keep. Google Keep works across the board and everything, but it's not a great note-taking platform. But Google Keep on iOS and Android both have a record feature that does dictation. But the thing that I like about their dictation is it also includes the audio file into that dictation. So a teacher can hear exactly what the student was saying before when it went into text. And it's a great way to compare of why did Google Keep think it was this word? You can actually hear that word being said. And I think that's a part of the learning process, is understanding the why behind it. So I really like Google Keep for that. And keep in mind that supports sharing. So you could share that into whatever the heck you want. And then the next one is, and this is an interesting thing, because writing is obviously gargantuanly important. Punctuation is when we talk about our future ready skills. And it's just has to happen. There are, however, some teachers that are beginning to use video-based responses and video-based only. And a product I'm going to point to is one called Flipgrid. And Flipgrid allows a teacher to ask a question, and the students then answer the question, and then that's placed on a grid with all of the students' answers. It supports immersive reader, and it actually listens to the audio to then create an immersive reader file for it. So you're beginning to see teachers now say, especially for students that struggle, I'm going to let you record your answer. Now, that doesn't answer the question of, we need to make sure that student knows how to write. But at the same point, it's a great way to identify when you have a student that can actually think freely and clearly, but they might have a struggling problem with putting that down on paper. And so Flipgrid is a really great tool for beginning to assess, those students' capabilities.
Well, let me just go on record and say we should probably close this episode out because it went a little longer than usual. No. This was critical because this is information that everybody should have readily at their fingertips. And I'm so excited to get this episode edited and posted. And thank you for sharing your depth of knowledge, because this was just wonderful.
I appreciated it, and I think one of the reasons I have this knowledge is if a parent is listening to this, I was your kid. If a student is listening to this, if a young kid is listening to this, I was you. And you are living at a really wonderful time where there are now tools available for you. to help you. And there's a lot of you out there. And I think this is very important for you to know. There are a lot of you out there. And the cool thing is now it's cool for all of us to learn in our own individual way. So own it, be proud of it, and realize how fortunate you are to have these tools at your disposal.
Thank you for listening to the Move, Look, and Listen podcast with Dr. Doug Stephey. All of the resources mentioned in this podcast and links to learn more about our guest can be found in the episode notes from whichever podcast app you might be listening with. You'll also find a link to Dr. Stephey's website, which is stepheyoptometry.com. That's STEPHEY optometry.com. You can also call the office at 626-332-4510. We'd like to take a quick moment to thank our sponsor, Audible. If you love podcasts, you'll love listening to audiobooks with Audible. Many of the books mentioned here in the podcast can also be found at Audible. Dr. Stephey has a free audiobook waiting for you as a gift just for listening to the Move, Look, and Listen podcast. Simply click the link in the show notes to audibletrial.com/inbound. Sign up for a free 30-day membership trial, and you can download any audiobook you like. And if for any reason and at any time you choose to cancel your membership, you get to keep all of your audiobook downloads. It's risk-free and for free for 30 days. Support the Move, Look, and Listen podcast by visiting audibletrial.com/inbound. We really do appreciate you listening. And until next time, for Dr. Stephey of the Move, Look, and Listen podcast, I'm Tim Edwards with the Inbound Podcasting Network.